AFTV, Newcastle 1, Arsenal 0. Laurie, very, very disappointing evening today.
Yeah, man, this one hurts. It's not been a good week. I was at the game on Wednesday. We were very disappointed in that game. But let's face it, we were outplayed and deserved to lose. I was upset with the manager at the changes he made to the team because I thought that disrupted the balance. But that being said, that's gone now. Today, I expected to go to Newcastle and get a result. I thought in the first half we were decent, we competed well, we matched their physicality and some, which was good to see. But as the game wore on and we didn't score, I always had the feeling that something might go wrong, and it did. The goal that they scored, and I say goal because it was controversial.
That's understatement.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I thought the ball was out, but you've very kindly explained to me about curvature of the ball and all the rest of it, so I'll take that on board. There was a possible foul in there as well. But I've got to say, man, for me, David Raya has got to do better on that situation. That's why he was brought into the team, because we had a goalkeeper, if you remember. His name called Aaron Ramsdale, remember him?
He's there somewhere.
Yeah. He was demoted, let's be honest, it's a demotion from the #1 spot. So we brought David Raya in, and initially, David Raya looked the part. However, I've got to be honest and say he's made a few mistakes now, and today was one that cost us the match. And I'm very disappointed by that, because I get it, we weren't that fluid up top. We created, I think the stats will say something like we had 14 attempts on goal to
one on target.
But only one on target. So that would indicate that the team is definitely lacking in fluidity and penetration in terms of, you know, getting shots off and scoring goals. However, that being said, games like this are won or lost on fine margins. And today, that fine margin was a goalkeeper with an obvious mistake. I mean, to me, that was the equivalent of missing a penalty or a striker being through on goal and shanking it. And that's where we lost the game, and it's disappointing. So I've got to call Raya out for that. I thought that was poor, and I think the manager now has a problem. He probably won't admit it, but he does. Because the goalkeeping situation now is such that you're looking at it and you think, somehow we've got two quality keepers, but the two of them are not making one, if you see what I mean.
What do you make of the way he's handled the situation? Because I'm of the opinion that, you know, I don't think he's been necessarily very fair on Ramsdale in this scenario, but what's your opinion on that?
I think you could be right. I think Ramsdale has a more than a fair argument to say that he's not been treated fairly, because if you remember, I think he lost his place for the Everton game, I think it was. And okay, Raya came in and he actually did well in that game, but up until that point, Ramsdale had not made any obvious errors to suggest that he would be dropped. And at first, the way we were looking at it was, he's going to give both keepers a fair chance. But if we're being honest, Raya has had several chances now, and there's been a few games when he's been less than stellar, and then culminating in today, I think that's a droppable offence. So I would like to see Ramsdale come in now for the Champions League game on Tuesday.
So he's finally going to get his Champions League debut, in your opinion?
No, because I don't think Mikel Arteta sees it that way. I think he sees Raya as his #1 keeper. I know that he prefers Raya's with the ball at his feet. I think to be fair to the manager, Raya is probably the more accomplished with the ball at his feet, definitely. But some would argue, myself included, that a goalkeeper's first and foremost job is to keep the ball out the net. And today, as I said, fine margins, he's dropped that huge clanger, we conceded a goal, and we lost the game. So really, what should have been a point is now we've lost 2 in a row, and there's a little bit of a gap there between us and City, which is a bit concerning, even at this stage of the season.
Absolutely. You mentioned fine margins there, and another potential fine margin that we could have had today is Newcastle being a man down. What did you make of Bruno Guimaraes today?
Well, it's interesting because just prior to that, or just before we did the watch-along, the discussion between myself and Turkish was, which is the better combat sport, boxing or MMA? And I think maybe Bruno Guimaraes might have been tuning in before he took the pitch today, because, I mean, jokes aside, I mean, what's going on, bro? I mean, like, I didn't know that a man could run up behind another footballer, literally run up behind him, forearm him in the head, and doesn't get sent off. And then people are telling me about, well, it was a forearm, it wasn't an elbow. I mean,
still assault.
Yeah, exactly. If you did that in the street to somebody, you run the risk of getting, actually, you don't run the risk, you would get nicked. You know what I mean? I was talking as a man that's done certain things that I shouldn't have done. I've done less than that and been in police custody. So how about that? You know what I mean?
It really is unfortunate because obviously there's that situation, and like I said a moment ago, less than 5 minutes later, kicking a ball at a player, or at least kicking it away and kicking it at a player, and it's still no yellow card. What do you make of the officiating performance today? Because I don't understand how they have jobs sometimes.
It's very frustrating, and as I said to somebody earlier, the only consistency about the VAR and the refereeing these days is the inconsistency, and it's becoming a bit of a problem. I mean, I'm one of those guys. I like to consider myself an old school fan. I don't like to call out referees and officials too much because I think the responsibility should be on the players. So, for example, you've heard me. I've been quite categoric. Today, I'm laying at the door of Raya in terms of that loss because what he did there or didn't do was poor, and it's ended up costing us. But I've got to say, man, the refereeing today was baffling. It was bizarre.
Absolutely, and obviously, not long till we go back into action, of course. Champions League midweek, Burnley on the weekend. Do we bounce back from this?
Yeah, we can bounce back. I think you say we've got to make a few changes, but I would like to have seen Reece Nelson today. I think in the defeat against West Ham in the week, he was one of the few players that had a decent game. I thought he looked enterprising, and he offers us a bit of energy. He's prepared to take players on, which I'm not seeing enough, especially from Saka today. I thought he was off it. So he might look at bringing in Reece Nelson. Whether he will or not, I'm not sure, because one thing I would say about the manager, there's many good things about him, but one of the things I don't see is flexibility in selection. He's not really going to take too many risks or, bring in players from the cold, as it were. He tends not to do that. I do think things could need freshening up a little bit because, the point's been made by people before me, and I think it's a good point that we're lacking fluidity, we're lacking penetration. He's somehow got to try and address that, and the way to do that might be to make a few changes, attacking changes. So, for example, today, I don't know about you, but I was a bit bewildered that our first sub was Zinchenko. Now, I'm not saying that Zinchenko had a particularly bad game, but nevertheless, when you've got attacking players...
It doesn't scream needing a goal, does it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at that. And even Jorginho, who didn't have a bad game, let's be fair. When I see Jorginho starting in an Arsenal team, I think of conserving, constraining, coming for a point. I don't see him as a guy that's going to open up defences and allow us to play free-flowing football. So I think there are certain things that need to be addressed, but absolutely, we've got the personnel that can bounce back. I'm a little bit concerned about the injuries. Martin Odegaard was out today. He's been a key player for us. Obviously, Partey, has anyone seen or heard from him recently? Jesus was a big miss today. We missed his invention. We miss his, his nous, the little things he does off the ball, on the ball. We missed that today. But yeah, if you're asking me, can we bounce back? Absolutely we can, but I would like to see a few changes.
Okay, thank you, Laurie.